My name is Claire Ainsley, 34 years old, product engineer, specialist in modular sensor design and, until recently, invisible. People at Helix Dynamics used to joke that I could sit in a meeting for an hour and never make a sound. They weren't wrong. I've always believed precision speaks louder than volume. But that morning, in a glass-walled auditorium in downtown Seattle, silence had its own kind of spotlight. The Pacific Tech Expo was the city's crown jewel of innovation. Rows of cameras blinked like restless eyes as Laura Kent, my former manager, took center stage. She wore a white suit, crisp as her smile, and moved with the confidence of someone convinced the world had already applauded. On the screen behind her flashed the title, Helix Dynamics presents the NovaSense interface. My design, my work, my code. I sat in the third row, hands clasped in my lap, the conference badge around my neck reading only Guest C, Ainsley. No one paid me any attention, not the reporters leaning forward, not the investors scribbling notes. I'd learned how to disappear long ago. Laura's voice filled the hall. This innovation represents years of collaborative effort. Our team pushed boundaries to create something truly revolutionary. Applause rippled through the room. She gestured toward the prototype, basking in the glow. Then a man in the press section raised his hand. Ms. Kent, he said, his tone too calm to be casual. The U.S. Patent Office lists a Claire Ainsley as the sole inventor of the NovaSense interface. Could you clarify that? The room stilled. Even the cameras seemed to pause mid-blink. Laura's mouth opened, then closed. I'll have to review that. There must be a clerical error. Her smile cracked under the lights, thin as glass. Dozens of faces turned, searching the crowd, when a few pairs of eyes landed on me. I didn't move. I simply stood, collected my coat, and walked up the aisle as whispers followed like static. Outside, the wind from Elliott Bay cut sharp against my face, somewhere behind me. Applause faltered, then stopped altogether. 2 days earlier, she had fired me for being too quiet. Now the noise was hers to manage. The summons came at 9:03 a.m., a calendar ping that simply read, Meeting Kent, L, no subject line, no note. Just a reminder flashing across my monitor like a warning. I walked the short hallway to Laura's office, the kind with glass walls that made privacy look performative. The rain outside streaked the windows in blurred vertical lines, Seattle's quiet applause. She didn't ask me to sit. Claire, she began, arms folded over her designer blouse. This isn't easy, but I've made a decision. Her tone carried that polished sympathy executives learn in training. You're talented, she continued, but Helix needs leaders who bring energy. Clients respond to confidence, not quiet observation. You understand. I did understand, just not in the way she meant. I've given 5 years to this company, I said softly. She nodded, almost impatient. 5 solid years. Yes, but lately, your presence feels, how do I put it, static. You're brilliant, but you disappear in meetings. Teams follow voices. Claire, not ideas scribbled in notebooks. Static. Disappear. The words sank in like cold water. Laura slid a single envelope across the table. 2 weeks of severance. References upon request. HR's ready to process your exit. I looked at her, the confident tilt of her chin, the faint perfume of victory, and realized she'd already rewritten the story. To her, this wasn't cruelty, it was efficiency. Back at my desk, people pretended to type harder. I took my time packing my ceramic mug, a half-dead succulent, and a folder I hadn't looked at in months. Provisional patent filed, January 2023, Inventor C. Ainsley. The label was fading, but the name was clear enough. When I turned to leave, Laura was by the elevator talking loudly about innovation culture. Her laughter carried through the glass like static again. I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. As the elevator doors closed, I murmured under my breath, barely audible even to myself. They'll hear me soon enough. My apartment in Fremont was small, but it had one redeeming feature: the quiet, the kind that let thoughts unspool without interruption. I placed the cardboard box from Helix on my kitchen table and began unpacking what was left of 5 years a mug, 2 notebooks, and that worn folder labeled Provisional Patent Filed January 2023, Inventor C. Ainsley. I opened my laptop and logged into Helix's archived project portal. The system still recognized my credentials. No one had revoked access yet. A list of files appeared: prototype logs, design specs, internal memos. I scrolled through timestamps until one stopped me cold. Dec 4, 2022, initial architecture submitted by C. Ainsley. The line that started it all. Every iteration afterward had my name buried deeper beneath team contribution updates. By February, the version Laura presented had replaced me entirely in the metadata. Still, the server preserved everything: dates, edits, and authorship trails. Machines, at least, don't play politics. I sat back, rubbing my temples. This wasn't just oversight. It was erasure dressed up as leadership. I found an old number saved in my contacts: Dr. Ellen Shore. She'd been my mentor before retiring 2 years ago. I hesitated, then called. Claire. Her voice was warm, surprised. I heard about the layoffs. You all right? I'll survive. I said, Ellen, I need to ask, do you remember signing off on my provisional patent, the modular interface design? She paused. Of course I do. You were the listed inventor. Helix filed it under your name before they merged with Novatech. Why? I exhaled slowly. Because they're using it now and calling it Laura Kent's. A silence stretched across the line, heavy but understanding. Then you need counsel. Claire, don't let them bury your work. Later that afternoon, I called an IP attorney, explaining that I just wanted to understand my rights. He listened quietly, then said, if they used your patent without a proper assignment, that's misrepresentation, not just oversight. His tone was calm, but the implication wasn't. For the first time in days, I felt something sharp beneath the quiet resolve. The following morning, the Helix intranet feed was already flooded with excitement. Banners, press releases, congratulatory posts all about Laura Kent's upcoming keynote at the Pacific Tech Expo. The subject line of the internal email read, Helix to unveil revolutionary NovaSense interface. I sat in the employee locker room, finishing the last of my clearance paperwork, while interns rushed past, whispering about how Laura was putting Helix on the map. Someone had even taped her smiling photo to the bulletin board beside the headline, Innovation Through Leadership. I took it down as I left, folded it neatly, and dropped it in the recycling bin. At home, I brewed coffee and set my laptop on the small table by the window. Outside, the Fremont Bridge opened for a passing tugboat. Traffic halted mid-commute. On my screen, the Expo livestream began: a sleek stage, shimmering blue light, the Helix logo pulsing behind Laura as she strode into view. Good afternoon, she began, voice smooth, practiced. Today, we're unveiling a new chapter in sensor intelligence, the NovaSense interface, developed under my direction at Helix Dynamics. Applause filled the speakers, sharp and metallic. I let it wash over me without flinching. She described her vision, her innovation, even the exact phrases I'd written in my design abstract months ago. Every sentence felt rehearsed from my notes, every gesture drawn from a story she hadn't lived. Then, mid-presentation, a familiar chime broke through the soft vibration of my phone against the table. I almost ignored it until I saw the sender: USPTO. Subject application 17584, 112, approved. Inventor Claire Ainsley. I stared at the screen. The email timestamp matched the moment Laura's audience began their standing ovation. She stood beneath the spotlight, radiant, unshakable, and I sat in the gray light of my apartment, steady, unbothered, as something irreversible shifted quietly into place. The patent was mine. The applause was hers, but only one of them would last. The morning after the expo, I woke to a string of unread emails. Most were from Helix's automated systems access revocations, HR confirmations, but one stood out. From Legal Department, Helix Dynamics Subject Reminder Confidentiality Obligations. The message was brief, almost polite. Please refrain from discussing internal intellectual property matters externally. As a former employee, your non-disclosure obligations remain in effect. No signature, no warmth, just a warning dressed in legal etiquette. I stared at the words until the letters blurred, then forwarded the message to my attorney. An hour later, my phone rang. His voice, calm and measured, steadied the noise in my chest. "They're drawing a line," he said. "They want to intimidate you, not litigate. Ownership and inventorship are separate things. The company can hold the patent, but your name can't be removed. That's protected by law." I leaned against the counter, the city humming faintly through the window. "So they can claim the profits, but not the credit." Exactly. And credit is what their narrative depends on. We spoke for a while about options, each one heavier than the last. File a complaint. Go public. Wait for Helix to make the first move. None of it sounded like me. I didn't want headlines or lawsuits. I wanted acknowledgement, the truth restored to its rightful place. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, the USPTO approval still open on my laptop screen. The seal glimmered faintly in the morning light proof. Not power. Outside, a faint drizzle began again, soft and persistent. I watched the droplets crawl down the glass, thinking about Laura's laughter echoing across that stage, about the interns applauding her as though she'd built something from air. For years, I'd believed that good work spoke for itself, that integrity would outlast noise. But that morning, I realized silence could be misinterpreted as consent. When the email invitation for the final day of the conference arrived open to all industry professionals, I clicked register. This time, I wouldn't be on the sidelines. The Seattle Convention Center hummed with anticipation. The air smelled faintly of coffee, steel, and ambition, the holy trinity of tech conferences. Rows of seats filled with investors, analysts, and executives dressed in the same quiet arrogance that had built an entire industry on buzzwords. I sat near the aisle, a lanyard resting cool against my neck. The white badge read, Guest C, Ainsley. Around me, conversations floated about market valuations and visionary leadership. No one recognized me. Not yet. The lights dimmed, and the giant screen behind the stage burst to life. The Helix logo spun into focus, followed by Laura Kent's smiling face. She stepped onto the stage in her signature white suit, polished and confident. "Good morning," she began, her voice amplified and controlled. "Innovation doesn't just come from ideas, it comes from energy, from leadership, from believing louder than the competition." Polite laughter followed. She basked in it, then gestured to the sleek prototype displayed beside her. The NovaSense interface was born from that philosophy, my team's relentless pursuit of intuitive technology. My work, rewritten in her cadence, my words, rearranged for applause. I sat motionless as her presentation unfolded, each claim tightening something inside me, not with rage, but with absolute clarity. I hadn't come to fight. I'd come to witness the moment the truth would surface on its own. In the front row, a man from Tech Horizon Weekly raised his hand. "Ms. Kent," he said, standing. "Just to clarify USPTO records list, a Claire Ainsley as the sole inventor of the NovaSense interface. Can you comment on that?" The room went silent. Laura blinked, her smile faltering. I'll have to review that. There must be a filing discrepancy." Camera shutters exploded. The stage lights burned brighter, reflecting off her trembling hands. I rose quietly, sliding my chair back. Heads turned as I stepped into the aisle. My badge caught the light plane, white, undeniable. By the time I reached the doors, the murmurs had become a roar. Behind me, Laura's voice cracked against the microphone. And for the first time, her noise no longer drowned out the truth. By morning, the headlines had already multiplied like sparks in dry grass. Helix manager's patent claim under fire. Engineer's name appears on government record. Quiet inventor, loud scandal. Every major tech blog ran a version of the same story, each pulling from the same public database entry. My name was no longer buried in a folder, it was printed across headlines. I turned off my phone after the third call from a journalist. Outside, Seattle's sky pressed low and gray, the kind of weather that made reflection unavoidable. By noon, my attorney called. The Helix board just announced an internal audit, he said. They're scrambling to contain it. Contain what I asked quietly. The truth at 3 o'clock. I walked past Helix headquarters for the first time since my dismissal. The building's mirrored glass reflected a distorted skyline, beautiful, but fractured. That's when I saw Laura. She was standing near the curb, phone in hand, jaw tight. When she spotted me, her heels clicked hard against the pavement. "You planned this," she hissed. "You humiliated me in front of the entire industry." I met her gaze, steady as rain. "No, Laura, you did when you signed my name off your slides." She froze, as if the sentence itself carried weight she couldn't lift. Around us, the world didn't pause. Cars still passed. People still walked, but something shifted. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Later that evening, an email arrived from the Helix board's executive assistant. The message was short. "Ms. Kent has been suspended pending investigation. The board would appreciate your cooperation as an external consultant during the audit process." I reread the words until they felt real. It wasn't vindication, not yet, but the ground had moved beneath the company that once called me invisible. In the quiet that followed, I realized power didn't roar. Sometimes, it whispered, and the whole building trembled to listen. When I stepped back into Helix, the air felt different, lighter, almost uncertain, like the company was holding its breath. The glass walls still gleamed, but the tone of the voices behind them had changed. People spoke softer now, careful, aware. The board had asked me to consult during the audit, but what I found went deeper than misfiled documents. Laura's regime had left invisible fractures engineers afraid to speak, analysts dismissed for being too methodical, ideas lost because someone's voice wasn't loud enough to claim them. I started small. I invited the development team to meet without hierarchy, no titles, no interruptions. For a while, they just stared at me, waiting for the inevitable presentation. When none came, someone finally said, "We can actually talk?" "Yes," I answered. And this time, everything said here gets credited to the person who said it. It took days, but slowly, energy returned. I reached out to 2 analysts Laura had sidelined, Amira and Theo, both of whom had quietly left months before. They came back, hesitant but curious, helping me and the legal department design a new internal framework, the transparency policy for innovation credits. Under the new system, every contribution design sketch, code line, data insight was logged with author attribution. It wasn't flashy, but it was fair. When the audit concluded, the findings were public. Laura's name was removed from the NovaSense inventorship record. Helix issued a formal statement acknowledging clerical errors and instituting the new credit policy company-wide. The media picked it up instantly. "The quiet engineer who changed corporate accountability." One headline read, "I barely recognized the woman in the photo, my own face under fluorescent office light. Expression calm, almost detached." When a reporter asked how it felt to have won, I told the truth. "It's not about volume," I said. "It's about value and about never mistaking noise for progress." In the days that followed, the building seemed to hum differently, not louder, just clearer. The building had begun to settle again. The new policies were in motion, the audit complete, and for the first time in months, Helix felt less like a battlefield and more like a workspace. I came in that afternoon to finalize the last consultation notes before stepping away for good. The hallway outside the executive offices was unusually quiet. Boxes lined the walls, stacks of folders, a few framed certificates, and a vase of wilting lilies. Laura Kent stood in the middle of it all, her white suit traded for a plain navy jacket, her expression hollowed by exhaustion. When she looked up and saw me, her posture stiffened. "You still coming here?" she asked, voice brittle. "Just finishing the audit report," I said, setting a file on the receptionist's desk. She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Well, congratulations. You won." For a moment, the words hung between us like fog off the bay. I studied her face, the same woman who once filled rooms with confidence and noise, now speaking barely above a whisper. "I didn't win," I said quietly. No one does when people stop listening. Her eyes flickered, as if something inside her cracked open just slightly. I thought of the years she must have spent proving herself in an industry that demanded constant motion, constant noise. Maybe she'd believed that being louder was the only way to survive. I turned to leave, pausing just long enough to glance at the empty desk behind her. The glass nameplate had already been removed, leaving only a faint outline in the dust. Outside, the drizzle had started again, soft, persistent, familiar. I walked slowly toward the street, the city lights hazy through the mist. The air carried that quiet hum Seattle keeps after rain, when everything feels cleaner, even if nothing truly is. I didn't look back. Some stories don't need closure in words. The silence between us had said enough. The certificate arrived in a plain brown envelope. No ceremony. No congratulations, just a folded letter from the U.S. Patent Office and the quiet weight of acknowledgement. I laid it flat on my desk, smoothing the corners, then slid it into a simple black frame. The embossed seal caught the light through the window, glinting faintly against the gray Seattle sky. My apartment had changed in small ways since those early days after being fired. The desk was cleaner now, the air less heavy. I'd painted the walls a pale shade of blue, something calm but deliberate, between client calls. I worked on a new initiative helping small startups build ethical innovation policies, teaching them what Helix had learned the hard way. The offers had come quickly after the audit, but this one felt right. I didn't need a title to validate it. I'd learned that power was quieter than people liked to admit. It wasn't in the spotlight or the speech, it was in the pause before someone decided to speak truthfully. On the shelf above my desk sat my old ceramic mug, chipped at the rim, beside the patent frame. It wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder of everything that had been tested and everything that had endured. Outside, rain began again, tapping steadily against the glass. I opened my notebook, the same one I'd carried from Helix, and turned to a fresh page. My handwriting was slow, deliberate, each stroke grounding me in the present. They said I was too quiet to lead, but the world runs on systems built by people who listen. I set the pen down, letting the sound of the rain fill the silence. It wasn't applause, but something steadier persistence made audible. Somewhere in the distance, a ferry horn echoed across the bay, deep and low. For the first time in a long while, I felt no need to defend my silence. It had already spoken for me.